Students, let me continue with the ideal gas equation. We will do many numericals based on this PV is equal to nRT. Before starting that numerical part, now let me tell you 2 or 3 important aspects of this ideal gas equation. P into V is equal to nRT. So here, what is that small n? It is the number of moles of the gas. N is the number of moles of the particular gas. Actually, this equation is applicable only to gases. You cannot apply this equation to liquid or solid. Actually, at present we do not know whether this equation holds good for liquid and solid. That we do not know. So be careful. For the time being, you should use this particular equation only for gases. Strictly only for ideal gases. Okay, we know all the real gases under some conditions behave ideally. So under those conditions, you can apply this equation to real gases also, no problem. Okay, so here in this n is the number of moles. Now can I write down? This n is equal to mass of the gas in grams upon molar mass of the gas, and molar mass has the units gram per mole. Now can I write down number of moles like that? Given mass in grams upon molar mass of the gas, and units of molar mass of the gas is gram per mole. Just you recall what is the definition of molar mass. It is nothing but mass of 1 mole. And what is 1 mole? It is the amount of substance which contains the same number of particles as there are in exactly 12 grams of C12 isotope. And that number is Avogadro number 6.023 into 10 power 23. So, mass of 1 mole of a gas is its molar mass. So, obviously number of moles is equal to mass upon molar mass. Suppose, for example, if you take carbon dioxide molar mass is 44 grams per mole. All of you recall, molar mass of any substance is its atomic or molecular weight expressed in grams. CO2 44 grams per mole, oxygen 32 grams per mole, nitrogen 28 grams per mole. So molar mass is nothing but atomic weight or molecular weight or even formula weight of that particular compound expressed in grams. So CO2 molar mass is 44 grams per mole. Suppose you are given 88 grams of CO2, then how many moles of CO2 are there in that particular mass? 2 moles. 44 grams corresponds to 1 mole, so 88 grams corresponds to 2 moles. So from that logic, we got this particular relation. Number of moles is equal to mass in grams upon molar mass. This is one thing. Okay, with this we can modify. Now let me modify this PV is equal to nRT slightly, some mathematical manipulation. Now for example, if you take that PV is equal to nRT, and I can write down this as PV is equal to, I can replace the number of moles with this mass upon molar mass. Molar mass is generally represented by capital M into RT. Now we can write down this as P into M. If you rearrange slightly, P into M is equal to small m upon volume into R into T. And what is that small m upon capital V? Mass upon volume, mass density. So I can replace this m upon V with the symbol for density, that is rho into RT. So finally we got a relation, that is Pm is equal to rho RT, where rho is the density, mass density. Now if you come to the units, now see, suppose if you take R value 0.0821 liter atmosphere per mole per Kelvin. Of course that is up to you. You can take R value the way you want. You can take it in liter ATM per mole per Kelvin or joule per mole per Kelvin, that is up to you. But if you take R value in liter ATM per mole per Kelvin, so then you see R is equal to 0.0821 liter ATM per mole per Kelvin. So in that case, the pressure will be in ATM, the volume will be in liters, temperature is always Kelvin scale, molar mass gram per mole. Then in that case, the density will come in the units gram per liter. Now all of you see this. Be very careful with the units. And the value of R is your choice. I have taken R value in liter ATM per mole per Kelvin. Then in that case, pressure should be in ATM, volume should be in liters. Then temperature is always Kelvin scale, it is not a problem. Then density comes out to be in gram per liter units. Okay, for example, if you take R value 8.314 joule per mole per Kelvin, then in that case the pressure should be in Pascal, Newton per meter square, volume should be in meter cube, temperature is always Kelvin, you see this per Kelvin, and then molar mass must be in kg per mole. Then density comes out to be in the units kg per meter cube. Now you can use this set of units also, it is up to you. So it all depends upon your choice of R. Which value of R you want to use? Depending upon that, the units of pressure, volume, density, all will change. But temperature is always in Kelvin. Whatever value of R you take, temperature is always in Kelvin. Moles, always moles, amount of the substance N, the unit of N never changes, it is always mole. So be careful about the units. Now with this, Pm is equal to rho RT. You can calculate the density of the gas, provided you know the pressure, temperature and molar mass. And R is anyway constant, universal gas constant. For all gases it is a constant. So if you know pressure, temperature and molar mass, then you can calculate the density of the gas. So this is one aspect of the ideal gas equation, which may be useful to you in solving the numericals. Now let me explain one small application of, you can say, PV is equal to nRT, that is payload. Do you know about this concept? Have you heard about that particular word, payload? So it is actually, you all know that hot air balloons are balloons which are filled with helium, some lighter gas, balloons which are filled with hydrogen. So they have a tendency to float, to rise. and how much weight they can carry with while rising, how much weight they can carry, they can lift. That is what is called as payload. And to calculate the payload of a particular balloon, of course you should know the data regarding balloon, its volume, its weight and all that. But apart from that, the conceptual background of that particular payload is buoyancy, buoyant force, Archimedes principle, so which you all must have studied in your lower classes. So if you know what is buoyancy and what is buoyant force, and if you know about this ideal gas equation, that is PV is equal to nRT, then you will be able to solve all the questions based upon this particular concept. So let me again define it. Payload. Payload is the maximum mass of a particular object which a rising balloon can carry. It is the maximum mass. Okay. Now before telling you about how do you calculate the payload and all that, let us recall the concept of buoyancy first, because one conceptual background behind this hot air balloons is buoyancy. So first let us discuss about that. So how do you define this? How do you define buoyancy? Buoyancy is the apparent loss of weight when submerged in a liquid. It is apparent loss of weight of an object when it is submerged in a liquid. You all must have felt this buoyancy and buoyant force. Suppose there is a boulder in a pool of water. Now, if you want to lift that boulder, if you try to lift that boulder, so you need to apply some force and you can lift it. Now, you try to lift the same boulder outside the liquid. You lift it in a liquid when it is submerged in a liquid, and you try to lift it outside the liquid. Now you will clearly feel that it is somewhat lighter in the liquid and heavier outside. So this apparent loss of weight is called as buoyancy. That means somehow the liquid is providing the lift to the object. It is exerting some force from below at the bottom, and it is applying some lift. So we feel that it is easier to lift that object in the liquid because liquid is providing some lift. Liquid is in a way helping us in lifting that object. So we feel it lighter. But the same object, if you try to lift, same boulder, exact the same boulder, if you try to lift it outside, then you feel it is heavier. Because outside the liquid, the lift provided by the atmospheric air is almost negligible. The lift is there in the atmospheric air also, but the liquid provides more lift. So the object feels lighter. And the same object, we feel it heavier outside. So this is what is buoyancy. So apparent loss of weight of a particular object when submerged in a liquid. Okay, now actually here in buoyancy there are two important points we have to learn. So the first point is when you submerge an object in a particular liquid, for example water, can I say that the submerged object will displace some amount of the liquid whose volume is exactly equal to the volume of the object. Now let me write this statement. The submerged object will displace some amount of the liquid. It may be any liquid, in fact. Actually, you can replace this liquid with fluid, because buoyancy you can apply to both liquid as well as gas, fluids, the states of matter which can flow. Okay, so some amount of liquid whose volume is exactly equal to the volume of the object. And all please remember, this is the volume, not weight. Weight may be different. Weight of the object and weight of the displaced liquid may be different, may be same. But the volume must be same. Obviously, it is obvious. Actually, with common sense, we can guess this. See, you have put an object in water, and the object is occupying some volume within that liquid. So, in the same area, there was liquid before. Before you put that object, there was the liquid. Now, the liquid has to vacate that place in order to make room for the object which we have submerged. So, obviously, the volume of the object must be equal to the volume of the liquid which is displaced. Now, suppose you take a beaker brim full of water. Now, do you understand what is meant by brim full? Now, full, completely full. You fill that beaker completely with water. So, now you keep an object, a small boulder in that. Now, the liquid will overflow. Now, you measure the volume of the liquid that has overflown, and you will find that its volume is equal to volume of the boulder. Or else, you take a container, you take a beaker which is partially filled with water. So, now you keep the same boulder in that beaker. Now, the level of the liquid rises. Now, you see how much is the rise in the level of the liquid height. Then you multiply that height with the area of cross section of that beaker. You will get the volume, and that volume will be, you will find the volume is equal to volume of the boulder. So, a submerged object will displace exactly the same volume of liquid as its volume, as the volume of the object. So, volume of the object is equal to volume of the liquid displaced. Now, second point. Actually, let me explain the second point with a small example. Suppose we have a beaker like this. And this beaker contains water, and this is the level of the water. Now here, suppose one particular object is submerged in water, and it is cylindrical in shape. Suppose a metallic can containing some other liquid, or metallic can containing some gas, that is up to you. But that particular object is submerged. Now what you do, you imagine a similar shaped water here. That means a cylindrical shaped sample of water here. Same height, same area of cross section, so same volume. Now, this particular imaginary sample of water has same volume as that of this actual object, the metallic can. Actually, this is not an object. We have not put any object here. This is just water. But we are imagining imaginary boundaries, same volume, same dimensions. So, this entire thing is water. Now see, the force that is exerted here on the upper surface of that imaginary sample of water, upper surface, and the force that is exerted on the upper surface of that actual object, metallic can, same, do you agree? The force acting on the two surfaces, one surface is imaginary, just we are imagining that there is no object there, that is just water, and the other surface of the metallic can. So the force acting on that particular surface, upper surface, same. Now, the force acting on the bottom surface, on both the bottom surfaces, imaginary water sample, bottom surface, the actual object, cylindrical shaped object, bottom surface. So these two forces are again same, do you agree? And one more thing, I have used a small arrow for this force and longer arrows for the bottom force, the force that is exerted on the bottom. Yeah, because it is greater. So you can imagine the magnitude of the force is directly proportional to the length of that arrow. So smaller arrows, smaller magnitude of the force, longer arrows, greater magnitude of the force. Obviously this force is greater than this force because this particular sample is also exerting some force on this bottom surface. That is nothing but the weight of the sample, weight of the imaginary sample. Similarly, here also there is another force which is acting from above on that bottom surface. The force which is acting on the upper surface plus the weight of that object. That is in magnitude, the sum of both of them, the sum of these two in magnitude is equal to this force which is acting from below. And here also these two forces, sum of these two forces is equal to the magnitude of this force acting from below. Okay, now this is water sample and this is some other sample. Now come to the actual situation. This is the water sample only and this is the some other sample. For example, the density of this sample is less than that of water. So obviously the weight of that object will be lesser. If weight of this object is lesser than the weight of this particular imaginary sample of water, this particular force, the magnitude of this particular force is lesser. If that is lesser, actually on the surface both forces are exactly same. Both on the actual object, on the imaginary surface. On both the surfaces the force is same. But because it is less denser than water, this object is less denser. Suppose there is gas in that can, so it is less dense than water. So then in that case, this particular force which is acting towards the bottom, that is nothing but the weight of the can, that is lesser than weight of the this imaginary sample of water. Then what happens? The sum of these two forces will be less than this force. So there will be a push from below. So the object floats, the object rises. That is what is buoyancy. And here, because everywhere water, this is also water, this is also water, this is also water. So obviously this force and this force, the sum of those two forces is exactly equal to this particular force which is acting from below. So this imaginary sample of water is at rest, is in equilibrium. It is not moving. Actually forces from sides equal and forces from the vertical component of the forces. Sum of these two forces is equal to this force in magnitude. So this sample does not move, it is in equilibrium, but this sample rises because this particular force is greater in magnitude than sum of these two forces because it is less dense, its weight is lesser. This is same, but these two are different. This is smaller in magnitude than this force, so it rises. So this is buoyant force. So now you can define buoyant force. This so-called buoyant force is equal to the weight of the displaced liquid That is buoyant force. That means this force minus this force. The force acting at the bottom of that object, submerged object, and the force acting on the surface of that object. The difference between those two is called as buoyant force, and obviously that is equal to the weight of the displaced liquid. So here, actually, although we discussed about buoyancy, buoyant force, everything in a liquid, but same concept you can apply in gas also. And let me tell you about that, how these are applicable to gas, and then we can move on to the payload. So buoyancy, buoyant force, and the lift provided from at the bottom, these are all applicable to gases also. So in any fluid, actually it happens in any fluid. The fluid may be liquid, the fluid may be gas. And because we are studying about gases, the states of matter gases, so let us apply this particular concept to gas. Okay, for example, this is the earth surface, and on the earth surface you imagine 1 cubic meter of atmospheric air on the earth surface. 1 cubic meter. One cubic meter of atmospheric air, which contains oxygen, nitrogen, and all that. Now, what is the weight of this particular sample? Actually, the density of atmospheric air is roughly 1.2 gram per liter. Density of the atmospheric air is roughly equal to 1.2 grams per liter. So 1 liter weight is 1.2 gram. So what is the weight of 1 meter cube volume? 1 meter cube means 1000 liters. So 1000 into 1.2, and if you convert into kg, it is 1.2 kg. So the weight of, you can say the mass, not weight, mass of 1 meter cube atmospheric air at the surface of earth is equal to 1.2 kg, and then its weight is equal to roughly 12 Newton. If you take G value as 10, then it is roughly equal to 12 Newtons. Okay. Now that particular 1 meter cube air sample is in equilibrium. It is at rest, because the vertical components of the forces on that particular sample, the net force is 0. Force from above and force from below. So they are matching each other, and if you see the net force, it is 0, so the sample is at equilibrium. But for example, you just imagine the same volume of any other object, suppose let us say balloon, which is less denser than air. As a result, the mass of its 1 meter cube sample is less than 1.2 kg. And the force, the weight is less than 12 Newton. So from above, if you add forces, the sum of those forces will be lesser than the force that is acting from below. So as a result, this 1 meter cube sample will rise, because it is less denser, its mass is less than 1.2 kg, its weight is less than 12 Newton. So as a result, the net force will be in the upward direction. So now it will get a lift in the atmospheric air. So that is what is called as buoyancy. And this is also a submerged object, and that object will displace some amount of atmospheric air whose volume is equal to the volume of this object. And that is same both in liquid and gases. Whenever an object is submerged and the object will displace some amount of the fluid whose volume is equal to the volume of the object. That is everywhere there. So let me repeat this. 1 meter cube atmospheric air weight is 12 Newton. But if you place any other object in its place, in the place of that 1 meter cube air, which is less denser, then the force acting will be, net force acting will be from the bottom, then the object will rise. So the same thing happens in balloon. Now see. Now actually if you take a balloon and you fill that balloon with hydrogen, you can fill that balloon with helium. Now do you know what is the density of hydrogen, what is the density of helium? Now we can calculate. If you imagine if you take hydrogen and helium as ideal gases, normal conditions, yes, almost every gas behaves ideally under normal 1 atmospheric pressure, 25 degrees Celsius. So every gas behaves ideally, almost ideally, no problem. So if you assume that, then density of hydrogen is equal to, you just recall all of you, Pm is equal to rho RT, which we have discussed just now. So then density is equal to pressure 1 atm, molar mass, hydrogen molar mass is 2 gram per mole upon RT, 0.0821 liter atm per mole per Kelvin into 298 Kelvin. Now this value will definitely be far less than the density of atmospheric air. So let us fill the balloon with hydrogen. So it will be less dense. Now it will rise because of the buoyant force. Okay. Now we can fill the balloon even with helium. Now in that case the density of helium comes out to be same 1 atm. Molar mass of helium is 4 gram per mole upon the same R value 0.0821 liter atm per mole per Kelvin into 298 Kelvin. Now this will also be far lesser than the density of air. So you fill the balloon with hydrogen or with helium, lighter gases compared to atmospheric air. So then the balloon will rise. Now you can attach some weight to that balloon and the balloon will carry that weight along. That is what is payload. One more idea here is, now you fill the balloon with air only, atmospheric air only, not hydrogen, not helium, but hot air. If you increase the temperature, the density will decrease. Density will decrease. Let us see how it is. So you can fill the balloon with hot air. Now you take a balloon, you fill that balloon with normal atmospheric air and then you start increasing its temperature. Now what happens when you increase the temperature? If volume is constant, if number of moles are constant, pressure is directly proportional to temperature. All of you recall Gay-Lussac's law? So the pressure in the balloon will increase. If you keep its volume and number of moles constant, the pressure will increase. Now you open the outlet because inside pressure is greater than the outside pressure, and when you make an opening to the balloon, then some gas will go out and the gas continues to go out until the pressure inside the balloon becomes equal to the pressure outside, that is 1 atm. So some amount of gas has left the balloon. So as a result, what happens to the density? Because volume constant, number of moles have decreased. So weight decreases, and that is what exactly we want actually. So the weight decreases. So hot air balloon will rise. Balloon filled with helium will rise. Balloon filled with hydrogen will rise. These are the different ideas. And here you have to ensure one more thing. The material with which the balloon is made of, that should not be heavier, that should be as light as possible, because it adds to the total weight of the balloon. See, you are removing the gas, it is okay, but the material with which it is made of, if it is heavy, then what is the use of removing the gas? So, first ensure that the material with which it is made of, the balloon is made of, should be lighter. Then either you take a lighter gas at normal temperature or you take a heavier gas at high temperature. Both will work. Okay. Now we can define the payload. Finally, the payload is equal to the maximum weight of an object a balloon can carry. Okay, and that is equal to mass of the air displaced minus mass of the balloon. Now this is what is payload. Now suppose the mass of the air displaced is 10 kg, mass of the balloon is only 1 kg. Now to that balloon you add 1 kg weight, still the total weight is 2 kg. Yes, there is still lift provided by the atmospheric air. Now you attach 5 kg to that balloon, total weight is 6 kg because weight of the balloon is 1 kg. Still there is a lift, so the balloon rises carrying this weight along. Now you attach 8.9 kg to that, the total weight will be 9.9 kg, still there is a lift. So like that the maximum weight of that balloon, the maximum weight of the object that balloon can carry along is 9 kg. So mass of the air displaced minus mass of the balloon. And how do you get the mass of the air displaced? Simple. First you calculate the density. You can use this formula, Pm is equal to dRT. You can, by using this formula, you can calculate the density first, then volume of the balloon is equal to volume of the air displaced. Now you know the volume of the air, you know the density of the air, and you can calculate mass of the air displaced. Now mass of the balloon, first add the mass of the material with which the balloon is made of. Then you take the mass of the air inside. The gas can be hydrogen, the gas can be helium, the gas can even be atmospheric air at high temperature. Whatever may be the case, we can calculate the weight. And by substituting those two values, you will get the payload. So this is all about payload. Now let me discuss about another gas law, that is Dalton's law of partial pressures. Now this is another important law. Boyle's law, Charles' law, Gay-Lussac's law, Avogadro's law, then Dalton's law. First, before discussing what exactly Dalton proposed by doing experiments, let me define partial pressure. So, what is meant by partial pressure? And you see that word part. Partial comes from part. Whole part. Sum of the parts is equal to whole. Something like that. Okay, partial pressure. Actually, when you have a mixture of gases in a container. So suppose there is a container in which only O2 is there, oxygen is there. So what is the pressure of oxygen? Maybe 1 atm, maybe 2 atm. So as long as we have a single gas in a container, the concept of partial pressure does not arise. Partial pressure comes into picture only when you have mixture of gases. Suppose in the atmosphere we have oxygen, we have nitrogen, we have carbon dioxide, if you take the major gases. So what is the pressure due to oxygen in the atmosphere? See, total pressure of the atmosphere air is 1 atm at sea level under normal conditions. But what is the pressure due to oxygen? What is the pressure due to nitrogen? What is the pressure due to CO2? So these are the partial pressures. So partial pressure is the pressure of one particular component in a mixture of gases, and it is technically defined as partial pressure is the pressure of a gas in a mixture of gases pressure of a gas that is exerted when that particular gas is alone in that vessel, is present alone. Simple. Suppose we have mixture of gases. There is nitrogen, there is oxygen, there is CO2. Now if you want to define partial pressure of oxygen, just imagine nitrogen and carbon dioxide are completely evacuated from that vessel. Just imagine, hypothetical. There is not a single molecule of nitrogen, there is not a single molecule of CO2. Just evacuate nitrogen and CO2. You don't change any other condition. No change in volume, no change in pressure, no change in temperature, nothing else. Only nitrogen and carbon dioxide are removed. Then what is the pressure of that oxygen, remaining oxygen? That is the partial pressure of oxygen. So it is the pressure due to one particular gas if it were present alone. And there is no other gas. Hypothetically, just imagine there is no other gas. Only that gas is present. Then what is the pressure of the vessel? That is the partial pressure. So it is the part of the total pressure that is exerted by a particular gas. Partial pressure is the contribution of a particular gas to the total pressure. Because total pressure is sum of the partial pressures. That is what is Dalton's law. Oxygen partial pressure, nitrogen partial pressure, carbon dioxide partial pressure. You add these things, then you will get the total pressure. So, total pressure of a gas mixture is equal to sum of the partial pressures of all the gases. Suppose we have a mixture of A and B, then we can write down PT is equal to PA plus PB, and for a binary mixture of A and B. And this is what is Dalton's law. Okay, now if you apply PV is equal to nRT, we can write down PA is equal to NART upon V. Partial pressure of A is equal to, in a mixture of A and B, number of moles of A into R, universal gas constant, into temperature. Actually, you all know, if two gases are present in a container, those two gases cannot have different temperatures. See, there is no question of TA and TB. See, PA and PB may be different, NA and NB may be different, but TA and TB cannot be different because gases are present in the same vessel. In the same vessel, two different gases cannot have two different temperatures. It is impossible. Similarly, you all know that a gas cannot have its own volume. The volume of the gas is volume of the container. A and B both are present in the same container, so volume of both the gases is the volume of the container. So there is no question of VA, VB, no, it is impossible. So V is common to both of them, T is common to both of them, number of moles may be different, and as a result pressures may be different. Okay. Now similarly we can write down PB is equal to NBRT upon V. Again same temperature, same volume. Now if you write down PA upon PA plus PB, then you can have NART upon V upon NART upon V plus NBRT upon V, and that comes out to be NA upon NA plus NB. And what is that fraction actually? Moles of one component upon total moles. It is called as mole fraction, and that is equal to mole fraction of A. Actually it is a Greek letter chi. It almost looks like X. It is actually chi, Greek letter. So mole fraction of A, moles of A upon total moles. So now we can write down partial pressure of A is equal to total pressure PA plus PB into mole fraction of A. Similarly, partial pressure of B is equal to total pressure into mole fraction of B. Now actually these are important relations. Partial pressure of any component is equal to total pressure into its mole fraction. So this is what is Dalton's law of partial pressures. Actually here there are two important aspects. Let me discuss those two important aspects. So the first one is, all of you look at this particular relation. Total pressure is equal to sum of the partial pressures. Now do you have any objection to that? I am asking this question because in our previous class we discussed that pressure is an intensive property. You cannot add pressures, you cannot add densities, you cannot add temperatures blindly, because intensive properties are not additive. Only extensive properties are additive. Volume can be added, mass can be added, moles can be added, but not pressure, but not temperature, but not density, but I am adding here. So don't you have any objection to this? No, you need not have any objection to this, because both the gases are present in the same vessel. Now let me take an example, very simple example. Suppose we have a country A. The name of the country is A, for example. In that country, the density of females is equal to 50 per square meter, and density of males in the same country is equal to 60 per meter square area. Now then, what is the density of the country A? What is the population density of the country A? Total population. What is the population density of that country A? Now, can I add those to 110 per meter square? Yes, because it is the same country. If you remember in the previous class when I explained about intensive and extensive properties, I have given you the data for two countries. And I told you that if these two countries merge and become one country, then what will be the resultant density? You please remember, in that question, area is also getting added. Population is getting added and area is also getting added. So in that case, you cannot add densities. You calculate the resultant population, you calculate the resultant area, you take the ratio, then you will get the resultant density. But here the area is same. So if you apply the same logic, you convert first the intensive into extensive property, then you calculate the resultant extensive property. From that you can calculate the resultant intensive property. You do the same thing, you will get the same answer. Okay, because you see this resultant density is equal to total population, that is 110, 50 plus 60. What is the total area? Meter square only, because area is not getting added. In the same area, density of females, density of males, and what is the overall density? You can add. The same is the case with pressure also. Now let me explain that actually. So 110 upon 1 meter square. So that is equal to 110 per meter square. Now if you apply the same thing to the pressure, how you can add pressure here? Listen to me very carefully. What is pressure basically? Force per unit area. So now suppose in a vessel you just demarcate a particular area, suppose 1 centimeter square area. In that vessel oxygen is there, nitrogen is there, carbon dioxide is there, mixture of gases. And how many oxygen molecules are colliding with the wall of the container? How many oxygen molecules? Oxygen molecules, let me represent it by small circles. These are the oxygen molecules. So how many are colliding? 3. And what is the partial pressure of oxygen? It arises because of these 3 collisions on that unit area. The force exerted by these 3 molecules on that area, that is the partial pressure of oxygen. Now on the same area, on the same 1 centimeter square area, nitrogen molecules are also colliding. And let me represent nitrogen molecules with squares. These are the nitrogen molecules. Suppose 4 nitrogen molecules are colliding. And what is the partial pressure of nitrogen? It is the force due to these 4 nitrogen molecules on that surface area. That is the partial pressure of nitrogen. Now, even CO2 molecules are also colliding. Now let me represent CO2 molecules by dots. Now what is the partial pressure of CO2? It is due to the force exerted by those 5 CO2 molecules. So the partial pressure is due to collisions of these 3 O2. Partial pressure of nitrogen is due to the force exerted by those 4 nitrogen molecules, and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is due to the force exerted by those 5 CO2 molecules. Now what is the total pressure? It is the total force upon the same area. So you can directly add pressures, absolutely nothing wrong with this, because same vessel, different gases, contribution of this gas, contribution of this gas, and contribution of another gas, so they can be added. So this is all about Dalton's law of partial pressures.